Hello, everyone. Do you hear me? Yeah, it's good. Perfect. Can I have a finger if you... OK, cool. Nice to meet you. I wasn't in the bathroom. Just this presentation is about civic innovation and how entrepreneurs are using technologies around the world to solve social and environmental problems. Basically, my name is Christian. I come from this island, middle of nowhere, Pacific Ocean, and I'm coconut surfing on Twitter. So if you have any questions after the presentation, you can tweet. And a few years ago, like 4 years ago, with a friend of mine, we went to travel around the world to meet entrepreneurs using technology to solve social or environmental problems. How many of you knows this guy? Maybe? OK. That's cool. So he's the Peace Nobel laureate, the guy who invented microfinance. So basically, how do you create banks that loans to poor people so that they can go out of poverty? And so after working in a big company named Gemalto, they do the SIM card, smart cards, we were thinking, couldn't we use technologies to do the thing that this guy did, and he won the Peace Nobel Prize, but for a bigger impact? So basically, I quit the company Gemalto, and we went to travel around the world, and we met projects like this one, using technology to solve problems in a faster way. So for example, this startup is called Inventure, and they do microcredit, but they assess in real time the micro-entrepreneurs thanks to mobile phones. So for example, you tell them as a micro-business owners how many money you did today, how many stock you have by texto, and they automatically tells you how much stock to buy or if you need to improve your marketing, even though you don't have any business skills. So they're helping micro-businesses do things better and go out of poverty. A second project we've met is called Baba Jobs. This was in India. So basically, in the slums, people are staying a long time in the slums and they don't have their economic development increasing because they have jobs inside the slums. And so it's super hard to find ways to give them better jobs out of their social circles. And so this company, Baba Jobs, used mobile phones to connect people who need people to cook, people to take care of the children, buy a computer, and they get access to workers inside the slums thanks to mobile phones. So it's helping millions of people in India, and it's an example of how you use technologies to solve social problems. This is another project we've met in the US. It's called Change.org. You already know, I think, about it. You start petitions online, you mobilize hundreds of thousands of people, and you can make laws change in your country or improve things you want to change. It's really interesting. And this is another example that we've seen in France. It's basically you want to compare who's the best between Sarkozy and Hollande on one topic, which is, for example, unemployment. You click, and you can compare the two projects and who has the best programs for you. So it's projects we found. And the last one I wanted to show you was La Ruche qui dit oui, the food assembly. How do you create better revenues for farmers, and at the same time, you get directly your food at your doors? So they were a startup funded by Union Square Venture, the same guys that invested in Twitter. But the main goal of this startup is not just to sell groceries, is to create better revenues for farmers, and at the same time, make it that you have healthy food. The last one, we were talking about it yesterday. It's called Bias Impact. So it's a guy that used to work at Eventbrite, and he quit to create a company that's building algorithms to solve social problems. So for example, they take data scientists from Uber, and together they design what would be the best mechanism to dispatch ambulances in San Francisco. And so you have thousands of entrepreneurs like that around the world who use technology to solve social or environmental problems. So that's why we created a startup that's called MakeSense, where all those 1,000 entrepreneurs we've met post their needs, their new challenges and innovations, and you have 25,000 volunteers around the world who can volunteer and help them. And then we started to start social incubators so that we have more projects like the one I showed you who are using technology to really solve social and environmental problems. And so, for example, right now you have like different incubators we've launched. We have around 4 running and different offices. We just launched in Lebanon 3 months ago. And the goal is really to make it that more and more citizens get engaged, but at the same time, more and more entrepreneurs use technologies to solve issues. But the problem is that if you look at the world's problem right now, it's still not enough. Like, even if we have 1,000 social entrepreneurs launching, even if you have billions of euros or dollars coming in, like this is the UN. They said these are the 17 problems we need to solve if we want to stay on this planet. And so when you look at them, they are quite huge, like zero hunger, like this thing. It's not just a few startups that will solve them. And because these problems is not just building companies so that everyone can take a cab all around the world quickly from his smartphone, it's a bit more complicated when you deal with those 17 kind of hardcore problems on hunger, poverty, education. You have to deal with governments, you have to deal with many things that are a bit complicated. We realized that it wasn't enough to just get more citizens and more companies, more entrepreneurs to start. But what we needed to do was also to get, thanks to technology, entrepreneurs and citizens more organized to solve an issue. So I'm giving you, for example, an issue that we're working on in Europe. It's like there is the refugee crisis happening. I think you're aware of that. And so basically, we found projects like this crisis. As a citizen, it seems huge. Like when you live in Paris, you're like, what can I do? It's a huge crisis. But then we divided into 3 smaller bits, which is basically recommending to citizens on our platform which are the projects that help people have a safe journey, the other ones that help them access to basic needs and informations, and the other ones that help them integrate and find a job in the EU countries. And so basically, you see that when you divide the big crisis into smaller bits, all the solutions and the entrepreneurs exist. So for example, there's a boat that's called SOS Méditerranée, and 8,000 citizens help him to do rescue operations in the Mediterranean Sea. There is another startup that's an Airbnb for refugees in Paris, and then you have like 500 of our volunteers that help them. But then if you get the 8,000 people that help the boat to understand that the next part is to help the second project that's helping them find a home when they arrive, it's something that starts to become interesting. So citizens doesn't engage on one project, but on a whole crisis. The next, we did it also on waste. Like we found 300 projects around waste around the world. There's been 4,000 volunteers getting mobilized. But here the novelty is that with the best projects we find, we go to see the governments to see how can we scale a solution we found with the citizens at a bigger scale in the administration. And so, for example, in France, the biggest platform when you have food waste is university restaurant. They have 300,000 meals per day. So with a startup we found and the citizen, we went to the administration and we tell them we're going to help you reduce food waste. And they gave us a pilot in 3 university restaurants, 6,000 meals per day, to test the solution they invented. So it's not just mobilizing citizens, getting them coordinated, but also trying to find which would be the best partner you could go with to scale the impact. And the next thing we're trying right now is to say, okay, we mobilize citizens, many projects, we work with 1 or 2 administrations, but the problems are global. Like, for example, if you reduce carbon footprint in Lebanon, but in France we do more carbon, what's the point? Like, we're on the same planet. So what we realized that what we needed to do was to do the same thing, but in different countries at the same time. So what we're trying right now with UNESCO is to say on a cause which is access to education thanks to digital, mobilizing the volunteers on the projects, but also working at the same time with 3 countries on a pilot on how do we improve their education system. And we involve into that the UN agency because they are the ones helping you get to new countries. So basically, this is just an example of how can what you all learn at Arabnet these 2 days, all the things you're working on your startup, they have an application to solve social and environmental issues. And the thing is that we're a startup mobilizing volunteers, so it could look super far from the tech world, but what we're really applying is the same analytics tools that you're using every day for your startups to track your metrics, whether you have your customers that are delivered on time, whether you're increasing your impact. We're developing a tool that allows our volunteers to go and assess the impact of the entrepreneur. How many people did you save with your boat this month? How many people got access to a school or to content online to learn about English, for example, thanks to your project? And then we track how much do they cost. And you can have the same metrics that you use in normal business to track your efficiency, but in the social field, like your impact versus your cost, and you see if your NGO, social enterprise, whatever, is improving. So it's really to show you that, and this tool were being developed by companies with Google or SAP, and you can see that those big technology giants, they're getting more and more interested into how do we use our technology to go further than the traditional business we do, because they're starting to have huge responsibilities. But the thing I wanted to close with, before maybe one question, if I wasn't too long, I don't know, you'll tell me, okay, 5 minutes, is to say that the only thing that is different from building traditional startups in the tech world when you work in social field is that people don't get into action. So for example, you will not volunteer for a project or want to change something just because of data. You know, it's not because you see, oh, this number of lives are getting impacted, it doesn't necessarily touch you. The thing that touches people is the stories, the art, the artists when they get engaged, getting together, and we have a lot to learn from the activist movements, what they took. So for example, every time we try to mobilize volunteers, we never go with a big data PowerPoint showing them this is the problem to solve, millions of water being diverse or millions of tons of waste. What we start is with a concert. So we take an artist which has a good story on a topic around waste, for example. Maybe he's created his whole band of music with waste materials as music instruments. And then we get people together to learn about his stories, discover projects. So it's really art and emotions that we use to mobilize the volunteers, but the layer we need to use to get more coordinated is technology. So I don't know if I was super clear, but if you have many questions, or one or two, don't hesitate.
Any questions?
Can you give us a glimpse on your business model?
So MakeSense is completely free for the volunteers and the entrepreneurs. However, we make 1.4 million euros revenues this year, which help us to be like 85% self-sustainable. Then we have donations and grants. And so the business model works that we monetize the data on the volunteers. We found that the main reason why volunteers participate is that because they want first to get connected with people with the same passion, but second, they want to increase their employability on the job market. So what we do is that we recommend the best volunteers to private company. So for example, L'Oréal wants to recruit people in marketing. They will ask us for the database. And then we will recommend them candidates. So that's one. Second business model is that many companies around the world right now, they're installing social networks, you know, like Facebook at Work, IBM Social Place, and they pay millions of euros to have it inside their company, but then the employees doesn't collaborate more. And because we use those tools to mobilize our 25,000 volunteers, they pay us to tell them how to do it. So we sell them our software and advice. This is the two kind of revenue streams. Yes?
Okay, thank you.
What about using your reporting tools for evidence-based finance? Now, a lot of the not-for-profits are starting to measure in a scientific way their impact and use this to get funding. It's a new trend, and this is where the money is gonna. So you guys could be enabling this type of transition. Have you looked into it?
Yes, so that's why we worked on that tool, because you see more and more money coming for what they call impact investment or venture philanthropy. And so those investors, they want to see the impact that the projects are having. The problem right now in impact analysis is that you have two approaches. You have like someone in MIT, Esther Duflo. She's developing the MIT Poverty Action Lab. So they do like big programs for 5 years to assess the best impact. And it costs a lot of money. And this approach, we think, is not good because maybe in 5 years, you have the mobile phone that was invented. And then a way of doing microfinance is obsolete. It's not the best way anymore because technology is changing fast. So what we measure isn't the impact at a certain point of the project. What we measure is that does the project progress? And does it have a capacity to improve its ratio impact versus cost? So we don't tell the investor, this is the best impact on this issue, we tell him this is the best project progressing the most out of all the projects trying to solve the same problem. So I don't know if I was clear, but okay. So.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Thank you, Christian. I hope that was insightful for everyone here. We're going to go for a coffee break now, and we'll convene again in this hall for a panel with some of the leading investors in the Middle East. There's going to be a lot of people with money on stage after the break, so please be here. There will be more topics on media in the other hall, and there will also be some pitches for startups that have hardware products. These are not the same startups that pitched on stage in the morning. They will be happening at the Maker Hub at the back of the exhibition area if you want to check them out and talk to them and see their products. So we'll see you back here in 20 minutes.